All right. Looks like we have everybody now. So I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, July 27th, 2020. Ask staff to mute themselves while I unmute you all and ask Laura to take the roll.
Alder Carter.
Present.
Nope. Have we lost Laura?
Yeah, it appears that way. Yeah.
Laura has no audio.
Okay. Well, to get us going at least, Dave, can you take the roll?
Yes, I can take the roll.
Thank you.
Alder Carter.
Present.
Alder Furman.
Present.
Alder Moreland. Alder Moreland.
Here.
All right, thank you. Alder Kemble.
Here.
Alder Verveer.
Here.
Alder Harrington McKinney.
Present.
Mayor Rose Conway.
Present.
Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. All right. Can we have our tech facilitator read the instructions, please?
Yep. All right. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Committee members, if you're able, please keep your video on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. The chair, clerk, and tech facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. All roll call votes will be all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, please utilize the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We have no general public comment. Are there any disclosures or recusals on today's agenda? All right, seeing none. That will take us to the consent agenda. We currently have items 6. Item 6 is the motion is to refer to the August 10th meeting. If there's no objection, we'll leave that on the consent agenda. We have registrants on items 18 and 20, so those will be excluded. And then we have requests on 26 and 27. So right now, we will take up items 18, 20, 26, and 27, and note the motion for number 6 will be referral to the 8-10 finance meeting. Are there any additional items that alders wish to have excluded? Alder Harrington McKinney.
20, 24, 25.
20,
Oh, maybe that's,
24, and 25, Alder?
or maybe it's 34. Let me look. Okay, it's 25. And it's 2024 and 25.
Alder, at this moment, items 24 and 25 are being referred to the next Finance Committee meeting.
Excellent, thank you.
So you don't need to take them off consent?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alder. But I will note that item 20, you have questions.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't request separation necessarily, but I did have a question for your honor as it relates to the reclass agenda items 1 through 15. So I don't know if your preference would be that we separate those for me to ask you the question, or we can just do that now under this discussion here.
I have no objection to you asking me now, but let's make sure that there aren't any other items first.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter? Alder Carter, you're still muted. Oh, I'm sorry, Alder. Try again. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I just had a question. When you said 24 and 25 are going to be referred to the next finance meeting on August 10th?
I believe that is the motion, yes.
And will the PSRC and I believe the EOC be able to meet before August 10th?
Although these are still the old versions of these items.
Okay.
That we're referring forward, and I think the expectation is that they will either be replaced or placed on file without prejudice.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other items for exclusion? All right, seeing none, let's get a motion. Alder Carter, on the consent agenda.
Move adoption of the consent agenda.
Alder Verveer, would you second? Thank you. And then Alder Verveer, a question?
Yes, thank you again, Mayor. So the obvious question that probably came to mind for many of us when we saw the numerous reclass agenda items, actually going back to when they were all introduced at the last council meeting, is how do reclassifications fit currently into the administrative actions you and your team are making, given the very tight budget constraints we're under? I hesitated to ask for separation on these because I know that each and every one of these employees is very well deserved and hardworking. Many of them I consider my friends, and I hope none of them are taking offense that I'm even asking this question, because it certainly is not a reflection on any of these 15 particular items, and I support them, which is why I did not ask for separation. But I see that Mike Lipski and several of the city staff that asked for these studies joined our meeting nonetheless. So anyway, my question simply is, are these perhaps the last of the reclasses we'll see for being proposed for some time? I noted several of these requests were apparently made pre-pandemic, and that the retro pay would go back to dates in early March for some of these employees. Or is it simply that staff have not been instructed to cease asking HR for studies on particular positions, or are they moving forward as routine business?
Thanks, Alder. They're not moving forward as routine business. We are looking at each and every one. Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything about the process that you're going through, if your audio is working now.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yes, just to Alder Verveer, the items that are on the agenda this evening, as you mentioned, were underway prior to the administrative actions being put in place. Future reclassifications or items that have been requested since the administrative actions were put in place in May are presented to the mayor's office for approval on a weekly basis. And that process has continued. And we are currently evaluating the status of the administrative actions in light of the second quarter analysis that we'll be presenting to Finance Committee at the August 10th meeting.
Thank you. If I could just ask one follow-up. So is HR still then receiving somewhat regular requests for position studies, or have those really fallen off dramatically? Do we know? I know Mike is here, but we could
I would defer to Mike Lipski for a response to that question.
Mike?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. Alder Verveer, HR has been receiving requests for reclassification, but at significantly lower numbers than pre-administrative actions. So while I'm not going to say that there's nothing coming forward, I certainly don't anticipate a 15-item agenda like we had at our personnel board meeting last week.
Very good. Thank you, Mike and Laura, for your responses, and thank you, Mayor. Again, my congratulations to all the employees who are affected by these well-deserved reclasses, and please don't take my question personally. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I also do apologize for the question, but I do have two specific questions, specifically because of the hiring freeze and the indication that we are in a tight fiscal budget. So the dates, I'd like to know the dates of these reclassifications, because what I heard was these were already in place prior to our pandemic, and I want to know what those dates are, if that's possible. And the impact on the budget, our action tonight, what will be the impact? Or do we know what the impact of tonight's action will be on our budget? And so, yeah, that's a question that I have. What is the impact of our decision to move these forward tonight?
Laura?
Yes, Alder Harrington McKinney, the 2020 financial implication of these 15 items is included in all of the individual fiscal notes for those items. I do not have the cumulative amount available, but we can definitely compile that for you and provide that as a follow-up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. All right, is there any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll record a unanimous vote on the consent agenda. And that will take us to item number 18, which is Legistar 60508, authorizing a purchase and sale agreement with Weld Corp Manufacturing for the sale of lots 27 and 28 within the Center for Industry and Commerce. And we do have registrants on this item. Matt Brink of Tierney Drive in Wanakee in support, available to answer questions, representing Tom Damon of Weld Corp. Tom Damon of Stokely Drive in DeForest in support, available to answer questions, and Tessa Kenny Odana in support, representing Tom Damon, the owner of Weld Corp. Are there any questions for any of our registrants on this item? Seeing none, Alder Carter, a motion?
I move adoption.
Alder Revere?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Are there any questions for staff or discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we're recording unanimous vote in favor of item number 18. Which will take us to agenda item number 20, Legistar 60605, supporting the application by the City of Madison to the National Endowment for the Arts for an Our Town grant to be used to help fund the consultant sound diplomacy in creating the Greater Madison Region Music Strategy and authorizing entrance into a contract should these funds be awarded. We have one registrant, Jacob Harris of East Wash, in support, not wishing to speak. Are there any questions for our registrant? Seeing none, Alder Carter, a motion?
I move adoption.
Alder Revere?
Second.
Thank you. Alder Harrington McKinney, you had questions?
Just an overview of, is there a staff that would just kind of summarize this overview for me?
The appropriate staff person would be Karen Wolf, but I don't see her here. Are there any staff present that can speak to this? I'm not seeing an appropriate staff person with us today.
Madam Mayor, I'll withdraw.
Thank you, Alder. I'm sure that Karen Wolf would be happy to discuss it with you if you reach out to her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. All right, so there's a motion and a second. Are there further questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing none, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item number 20. And that will take us to item number 26, which is Legistar 61252, creating section of the MGO to prohibit the Madison Police Department from obtaining any property from the Defense Logistics Agency under the 1033 program. Alder Carter, a motion?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Alder Kemble will second. And Alder Furman, you asked for separation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted, I believe Chief All is here. I wanted to ask the Chief what this program is currently used to obtain for the city.
Chief?
Sure, we've used it for a number of years for a variety of things that we receive. Most of it pretty mundane. Some of the most pertinent things that we've received recently in the last year or so have been N95 masks. We're able to get, before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to get a fairly decent supply of N95 masks. And as we moved into the pandemic, and obviously the supply chains for those things were very limited, and it's only those masks that we received through the 1033 program that were able to allow us to really sustain and operate effectively out in the field. Some of the other things that we've received over the years on the more smaller ticket mundane side are flashlights, tourniquets, eye protection, that sort of thing. There also have been some more expensive items that we have received, including some night vision equipment that's very expensive, and some robotics that are really high-end expensive things that we've been able to get through the program. Those are the only cost that we have is shipping, so there's no cost to the city to acquire any of that stuff. And some of the most of the higher ticket items, actually, they being the federal government retain ownership of. So when we're no longer interested or able to use them or they don't work, we actually have to return them to the program.
Chief, are we receiving stuff like vehicles or anything like that through this program?
Not currently. We, of course, 7 years ago, we did receive an armored vehicle through them, and that has since been returned. And we have not received any other vehicles through the program. And there's usually not much available that comes through them in the vehicle context that is worth pursuing.
I guess another item that I'd be curious, have we ever gotten tear gas or other non-lethal items through this program, or especially recently?
Nothing recently. We did probably 7-8 years ago request some less lethal launcher tools that we ordered to sort of, I guess, test and evaluate, and we received them, and they were not anything that we wanted to pursue, so we returned them. So, but no tear gas, no chemical agents, and other than that one sort of T&E process that has since been returned, no other less lethal tools.
Does the department have any official or kind of unofficial policy on how the program is used? Like what kind of stuff you look for there?
Yeah, usually it's not in an official document because there's only a small group of us that have access to it and can request equipment through it. So it's pretty well regulated through the state initially and then through the federal government program. And basically we are looking for things that are either really expensive big ticket items that would be a big cost to the city, or we're looking for sort of things where we can get in mass, like the N95 masks or flashlights or tourniquets that we can use that will save the city money. It's usually almost all, I guess it's all things that we're already using in some way, shape, or form, and it's just sort of supplementing the things that we already have.
Thank you. I have a question for somebody in finance, whether that's Dave or Laura. I believe this is in the Legistar file, but I definitely wanted it at least to be spoken today. So it's clear, approximately on average, how much money do we save from this program because of this program?
Who wants to take that, Dave or Laura?
I have the fiscal note up here. I can just review that quickly if Laura has some things to add to that. Basically, it's about $25,000 a year of annual operating amounts. Those are for supply types of material, and then about $100,000 in capital funds associated with larger equipment. So things like robotic equipment and things like that.
Okay, thank you. I'll have some comments later on during the comment portion, but that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, questions?
My question was going to be about our savings, and Alder Furman has already asked that question. Thank you.
All right. Are there other questions for staff? Alder Kemble?
Yeah, so on that question, is it that MPD budgets for $100,000 in capital and $25,000 operating to purchase those things, and then when they get them through this program, they don't have to spend that money? So are they planning for in advance in the budget is what I'm asking.
Is that for me, Alder?
I guess you or finance made that did the financial, do the budgets and did that financial note. So is that something that are those items that are sort of, that are linked to operating and capital budget requests made the year before, and then when you don't have to buy them, are they sort of, is it just that money is freed up in your budget for other things?
I think the short answer is no, is that those items, these are generally things that we've not been able to request as a supplemental operating budget or as an addition to the SIP. And these are things that are, I would say, mission critical. And we've been able to avoid requesting them in future years by securing them through the program. But it's not an existing line in the budget that we were able to return to the general fund.
Okay, thanks.
Are there other questions, Alder Revere?
Thank you, Mayor. But many of my questions as well were asked and answered. I do have maybe one or two questions just to clarify for the chief. So, Chief, you had been asked if any non-lethal or less than lethal equipment had ever been procured through this program, and you explained that. I just wanted to clarify, I don't even know if they're eligible, but are lethal munitions and that sort of thing ever available as part of this program? And if so, have we ever applied for any of those?
There is a mechanism to request firearms through the program. And if you go back into the 90s, 5+ years ago, we did get a few rifles. I think 4 rifles we received through the program. Those have since been returned. But since then, we have not had any interest in pursuing firearms through the program. And we don't currently have any that were received through the program.
And do you know, over the last maybe several years, I'm not maybe going back to the 90s, but do you know whenever you have an interest in the department in acquiring items, be they first aid kits or robotics or night vision technology, do you ask for permission from the Common Council via resolution to do so or not?
We have a standing resolution, I forget how many years ago it was, that allows us to do so.
I see. Because I vaguely recall us discussing at this very committee in the past the night vision goggles, but I never recall us discussing, N95 masks or first aid kits and that sort of thing. So you're saying that, do you know what year that was, by the way, Chief?
I want to say it was probably 2012-ish. And just a point of clarification on the night vision, there's also a standalone program where we lease night vision, and that has come before you on I think an annual basis, because there's a written agreement that's required. So that's a separate program from the 1033 program. So that's probably why you're remembering that, because that would be coming back probably every year for the last 5 years or so.
And what entity is that agreement for?
It's an offshoot of the Defense Logistics Agency, and I don't remember the exact branch of it, but it's a low-cost lease program.
And we are in the midst of an agreement currently for that technology?
Correct.
I see. And so this resolution that you believe might have been in 2012 gives kind of blanket authorization by the council to apply for any equipment that you deem necessary through this program?
Yeah, to accept it, yes.
I see. Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Kimball?
Yeah, when you say robotics, could you describe what you mean? What types of equipment, robotic equipment purchased through this program? Like, what is it? What things are we talking about? What do they do?
Although you might remember some of our discussions in the surveillance committee over the years on this, and basically they're used, designed for high risk tactical operations, SWAT operations, typically with an armed person who's barricaded in a home or a residence or a dwelling. And the robotics allow us to they're on wheels or on tracks, and we can drive them in, and then there's a camera, and allows us to sort of search an area, or even communicate through a microphone and through a video camera to search an area more safely than using officers or some other mechanism.
Okay, that's the only robotic thing. When you say robotics, that's the equipment you mean?
Right. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you tell me when it would be appropriate to offer a substitute? Is it when this comes up for a vote or when?
Alder, we're still on questions for staff. So when we enter in discussion, then it would be appropriate to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, questions for staff? Alder, you're muted still.
I think I'm unmuted. If we had to buy all this equipment that is allowable, how much would we be spending? Either Dave or Chief Wall can answer that, either or.
Well, if you look over the cumulative volume of things that we've received through the program over the years, it's over $1 million worth of equipment. I mean, it's some of the things are very expensive. The robotics in particular are very expensive, and the night vision. So the program is premised on availability, and there's no guarantee of what becomes available for agencies to request. So there's variation from year to year just based on availability in the program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for staff? All right, seeing none, then we're into discussion. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to offer a substitute. And that substitute is that MPD will obtain approval from the Common Council for purchase of property from the Logistics Agency under the 1033 program.
Is there a second for Alder Harrington McKinney's substitute? Alder Carter, I see Alder Moreland raising her hand.
I'll second it for discussion.
All right. So Alder Harrington McKinney, again, the substitute is that the MPD will have to obtain approval.
Yes, and I'll speak to the reason that I put forward the motion. The motion as it stands says that the Madison Police Department, it prohibits the Madison Police Department from obtaining any property from the Defense Logistics Agency under the 1033 program. And so Acting Chief had indicated some items, like with the pandemic, some items that were purchased under the 1033 that we would not want precluded because if we had to purchase those items, that would be an impact on our budget. And so I'm really having I'm having a difficult time with the word any. I understand the more lethal objects or whatever that can be purchased under the 1033, but for us to pass an ordinance with the any in there really concerns me as we're looking at policy going forward for the city. The word any is troubling to me. And so that's why I was putting forward a substitute that will, allow the council to weigh in on if there are objects or equipment that the police department cannot purchase, but giving leeway for those items as described that they do purchase, the non-lethal ones that they use under normal circumstances that I'm sure that the body would not support them obtaining through the 1033 program. So that's the nature of my substitute.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Prestigiaco.
Thank you. So the 1033 program is a literal direct tie to the military industrial complex. Okay. I'd ask yourself if you support that institution. The city of Madison Police currently has access to a plethora of discount military grade weapons. And, we as a council need to just take a stand and say no. And I also really want to demonstrate how uncontroversial this really is, despite a widespread effort to manualize. Just recently, on July 24th, 2020, the U.S. Senate voted 51-49 on Senator Schatz's amendment, which would abolish the entirety of the Defense Logistic Agency's 1033 program. Our own Senator Tammy Baldwin supported this effort. This is not as controversial as those in the police union and certain special interests in this community make it out to be. Agencies that are here to protect and serve would not have access to military-grade weaponry, no matter the loophole or the exclusions. And I'm really not interested in having a debate on loopholes or exclusions for medical equipment from the Defense Department. And I think this ordinance is about rethinking our police, and equally important, severing the link completely between the City of Madison Police Department and the military-industrial complex. And just because these tools aren't lethal, they've gotten lethal tools before, and yes, they've returned them, but just because some of these aren't lethal doesn't mean they can't be used as tools of a white supremacist institution and be used as weapons, as supplements to weapons. And so this vote either upholds that institution, and I'd ask you all to consider, vote considering the consequences of this could be used to supplement lethal force. And so, I'm again not really interested in having a debate about an exclusion to it, because I do feel we as a city need to take a fundamental stand against the military-industrial complex, which plagues this entire country. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Berman.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually wanted to ask the chief about the substitute. I've got some comments on the overall 1033 program, but I had spoken to the chief to try to better understand this program before the meeting, and actually asked to do something similar to what the substitute was, and wanted to give the chief an opportunity to explain what he explained to me about how the program works and whether or not something like this is feasible.
Chief?
Sure. The way it works is there's a web portal, and however they decide what becomes available ends up in that portal. And then if we see it, we can go in and request it. But it's first come, first served. And what is in there today is different than will be in there tomorrow and the day after. So there isn't time to seek approval in advance because of that. It's really hit and miss depending on what becomes available. And once it becomes available, particularly things that are in good condition and of high value, there's typically a lot of demand and other agencies requesting them right away. So it's first come, first served. It isn't like Amazon where there's an inventory and you can think about what you want and then go and get it. It just, things pop up in there and you have to sort of take advantage of their availability.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to take an opportunity to talk about the substitute on the overall 1033 program. I am not supportive of anything that turns our police department into a division of the military. I don't believe this is what we are using this program for, based on the information provided by the chief. I think at a time when we are dealing with COVID-19, as well as a huge budget deficit, it would be reckless for us to turn down our ability to get items free of charge. I have a Medium post up that was posted by the senator who had tried to pass an amendment to the defense bill that unfortunately was not successful. And in there, it notes a few items that the military, if this had passed, would no longer be able to give local police departments. And those items include tear gas, bayonets, grenade launchers, grenades and explosives, armor-piercing firearms and ammunition, tracked combat vehicles, and weaponized drones. I absolutely agree that those items should not come to the Madison Police Department. I don't want to see the Madison Police Department getting that from the federal government. I'd be supportive of an amendment that would stop the department from getting any of those items. But I think an overall ban is a mistake. And I think, unfortunately, the substitute, while I appreciate the idea behind it, I think it's unworkable, because when these items appear, the department doesn't have the ability to wait 2 or 4 weeks or longer before claiming them, because they're up and they're gone pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter. Oh, my apologies, Alder Carter. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chief, going with, I did a real quick list of what Alder Furman just listed that was going to be banned from the senator's resolution. Do you have a problem if we listed those? I think they were 5 items. Is that correct, Alder Furman? 6 items. Would you object to those 6 items in a friendly amendment?
Based on what I think I heard from Alder Furman, I don't think so. Those are not things that we've requested, and are not things that I would object to having restricted. No.
I would ask Alder Furman, and whenever his time comes back up, to list those 6 items, and I'll make a friendly amendment to the friendly amendment at the proper time.
Okay, we'll come back around to Alders Furman and Carter then, if necessary, and Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I absolutely am not supporting our police department getting militarized equipment. And even in looking the research that I've done around the 1033, it was the lack of accountability that was the challenge. Something of this nature, and I hate wordsmithing and trying to make sausage on the council floor, but considering Alder Furman's input, and also thinking about the any, and that's the issue that I had. Would it be appropriate if we referred this item to allow the acting chief to look at those items, so that we can really look at what those 6 items are? I don't know if there's 6. I haven't had a chance to look at what those items are. It might be 6, it might be 5, and I don't know, but definitely outline in the any those items that we absolutely will not support, and giving the Madison Police Department leeway if they want to buy flashlights or N95 masks, they should not have to come back to the council to have those approved. But so that we would have a solid ordinance, that we are putting policy in place now that will also be in place going into the future. I think that we should spend some time and make sure that what we're voting on really has key substance. And so if my colleagues would consider that as a referral to the next council, the next Finance Committee meeting, I would add that as a substitute.
So,
I'd like to refer this to the next Finance Committee meeting.
right. So, are you withdrawing your initial substitute, Alder
Yes.
Harrington McKinney?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay. Is there objection on the body to withdrawing the substitute, which is currently before us? I'm only seeing hands that were already up, so I'm assuming that there's no objection. And so then Alder Harrington McKinney wishes to move referral.
I would like to refer this to the next Finance Committee meeting.
Finance Committee meeting. Is there a second for referral?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to refer to the August 10th Finance meeting. All right. Alder Harrington McKinney, did you want to discuss any further?
No, I'll take my hand down.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter?
Yes, I would just say that I would like to see Alder Furman, McKinney, and myself work on the substitute for the next finance meeting and have it ready for people to actually review.
Thank you, Alder. Alder, let me just see. Attorney Haas, did you have a comment that you wanted to put in here?
Just a technicality. I think it sounds like we're talking about an alternate rather than a substitute. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it would be an alternate.
Yeah.
When it comes back, most likely. Thank you, Attorney Haas. All right, Alder Kimball.
Okay. I won't be voting to support referral or any alternate. And here's why. So we just heard two things from Chief Wall. Number one, that they never know what's going to come up, so they can't plan for it. And number two, the items that they get through this program are not items that, I mean, it's not exactly the inverse, but it's correlated. The items that they get are not items that are so important to the functioning of MPD that they budget for them. So these are things that are ancillary to their core operations. If they were part of their core operations, they would be budgeting for them, since they don't know what anything could come up and they don't know what is going to come up. Now, Chief Wall alluded to our conversations in the surveillance work group, and we had this conversation about council approval of 1033 items, particularly, most specifically when it came to surveillance equipment. And what we passed in our ordinance several weeks ago was a provision that said, if they get surveillance equipment through the 1033 program, they can't use it and they have to seek council approval as soon as they get the item, and they have 60 days for council approval. If council doesn't approve, they have to send it back. So just FYI, there is a mechanism for post-acquisition council approval, and we have one as it relates to surveillance equipment.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. I will support the motion to refer, in part because I do know that there are several other committees that this item has been referred to, and that by all appearances, it doesn't seem like referral to our next meeting would hold up the timeline of when this would come back to the Common Council. With that said, I do want to thank those colleagues that want to try to work on this. I would encourage them to try to work with the author of the proposal, Ald Prestigiaco, although it sounds like perhaps idea of a compromise will be a hard one to achieve. I really think that we need to do more in the way of a compromise, if there is going to be a compromise beyond the half dozen items that Alderperson Furman recited for us. And I appreciate you, Alder, for not only researching this, but also sending us the email during the course of our discussion here with the specific items in the email that you had earlier listed for us. But when you look at those specific items, it as I read it, it says we would only perhaps not accept, quote, armor piercing firearms and ammunition. I think it's pretty clear that at least I very much don't want to accept any firearms or ammunition from the Department of Defense. So I do think that we need any compromise that I might consider supporting needs to be more exhaustive than the half dozen specific items that were just discussed. And then I really love the idea that Alderperson Kemble reminded us of in the ordinance that she worked hard to create, which the council adopted recently, that there be a post council authorization that's required. And so if it's something like tourniquets and N95 masks in the midst of a pandemic, I think most of the council, this council or future councils, would see those as kind of FEMA-like items that should not be controversial. Although I totally get the argument of the military-industrial complex and that sort of thing. I guess what I'm saying before we take the vote on the motion to refer is I just wanted to ask those alders that have volunteered to work on this between now and our next meeting, if the motion is successful, to look beyond these half dozen items and really take advantage of Alderperson Kemble's language that's already codified in our ordinance as it relates to surveillance, and then also make the list of prohibited items much more comprehensive than what has been discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter.
Yes, and thank you, Alder Mike. Alder Kimball and I were on the surveillance committee, and I do have that language, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't add in the robotics, because I knew that was already in our ordinance that we drafted. I appreciate Alder Max's commitment to separate the police department in general, and specifically the Madison Police Department, from the military. However, I do feel, and I accept your challenge, Alder Mike, I do feel that this is something that we need to concentrate on. I will be supporting this referral. I do feel that we need to really come up with an alternate. Thank you, Attorney Haas, for telling us we were wrong before. But I do think we need to come up with something, and I'm more than happy to work with Alder Furman and Alder McKinney. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Oftentimes when we form these committees and we have someone who is strong as our junior alder, who is absolutely 100% against the police department having any of these equipments. And sometimes it is good to have that challenge in the mix. And so it really depends upon whether the dissenting alder would consider sitting at the table and really identifying those items are absolutely, because that, from what Alder Furman described, that can be expanded. So if he is willing to sit with us as we work through an alternate, I would welcome him on that group. If he's not, at least we offered the opportunity for him to sit with that group.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue. The motion is referral to the 8:10 Finance Committee meeting. I expect that a roll call is requested, so we will ask staff to mute themselves as I unmute you all and ask Laura to call the roll.
Alder Carter.
Aye.
Alder Carter votes aye. Alder Furman.
Aye.
Alder Furman votes aye. Alder Kimball.
No.
Alder Kimball votes no. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Aye.
Alder Harrington McKinney, aye. Alder Moreland.
Aye.
Alder Moreland votes aye. Alder Revere.
Aye.
Alder Revere votes aye. There are 5 ayes, 1 no.
With 5 ayes and 1 no, the referral, the item is referred to the 8:10 Finance Committee meeting. And that will bring us to item number 27. Excuse me, let me restore the mute. That will bring us to item number 27, which is our economic update from finance staff. So, Dave?
All right, thank you, Mayor. We'll share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see this. Did that work? Doesn't look like it. Try again.
Oh, close to it.
All right, there we go. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I will move through this quickly. I think the main message is that the green shoots of a recovery of May and June have been replaced by a stall in the economy because of the increase in cases in many parts of the country, which has to some extent plateaued what have been drops in unemployment and increasing business activity. But I'll run through these graphs relatively quickly. First is one good measure of the economy is the extent to which fuel is being used on cars and trucks, and that has recovered about 80% since its low point in March. But airline travel is still relatively quite a bit lower than a year ago, or even just looking back to March 1st as the starting point. There has been some gradual increase, but still down about 75% from March 1st. We gained back about 1/3 of the jobs lost during the pandemic, looking at that period of March to June. And just looking at California and Florida as an example of increasing coronavirus cases in those states, which, as I'm sure you've read, are leading the nation now. What had been growth in terms of measures of eating out has fallen off somewhat, given what's happening with cases and people deciding to stay at home more rather than returning to economic activity in that sector. Vehicle sales took a big plunge with the stay-at-home orders. About half of that has been recovered through June. We are starting to see some impact on mortgage delinquencies. The map on the left is share of mortgages at least 30 days delinquent. See that most of the country were relatively low, 2 to 4%. We've now got major parts of particularly the southern states, the Northeast. Some of this is maybe delays in payments rather than delinquencies, but nonetheless, it's a trend that we are beginning to see in terms of the ripple effects of the economic impacts of the pandemic in the economy. Pending home sales, those have nearly bounced back. That's probably one of the bright spots of the economy right now. We'll show some more data on that, but probably fueled by the extremely low, historically low interest rates for mortgages that home sales are up. This is national unemployment insurance. We did see a slight uptick in initial claims, again, in response to the economic effects of the spike in cases in some parts of the country. And continuing claims have continued to slowly fall off, but are still well above historic levels and well above prior peaks. This is the picture of what's happening in Wisconsin with continuing claims. Again, we've seen some drop off there, although it has leveled off. I'll show you a couple of graphs where some of the impacts, again, of rising case loads, even in Wisconsin, have slowed down and actually seen some increase, modest increase in unemployment claims. There's been about $2.8 billion in claims paid in Wisconsin since mid-March, and about $1.9 billion of that is related to the federally supported $600 weekly add-on, which, as a reminder, expired last Saturday. National retail sales, I showed you that May witnessed some increase, and June has also seen some growth year over year, kind of returning almost to no change. So, but again, that's June measurements. Again, as I referenced, new home sales, those have quite a rapid increase in June. And then Wisconsin's added about 104,000 jobs in June. So again, some return towards the baseline, but still quite a bit reduced from those normal levels. This is just looking at county sales tax distributions and kind of a measure of economic activity in the county. There is some variation throughout the year, but the trend through half the year at least is downward, although not dramatically downward compared to where we thought it might have been. In talking with the county, overall through June, they're probably down about 3 to 4% in sales tax revenues compared to last year, but we'll have to see how the rest of the year looks. I've showed you some versions of this comparison before. This looks at food service and drinking places sales tax collections, with that blue line in Dane County being 2019, and then obviously the rapid drop off due to lockdown, and then some return. This only shows May. So in later months, we'll see how that continues to trend. And then accommodations, again, the rapid drop off, not as rapid as an increase in May as what happened at food service and drinking places. Again, a reflection of what we saw earlier in the airline employments, not as much travel occurring. This is, again, what UI, unemployment claims, initial claims on the left, continuing claims on the right, looking at Dane County, Milwaukee County, and the rest of the state. And you'll notice those initial claims have picked up slightly. That's in Milwaukee County, and have plateaued pretty much in Dane County. Again, some of that impact of some of the orders in response to what's happening with case counts. The continuing claims have also plateaued and actually gone up slightly in Milwaukee County. Again, referencing those sort of stalling out of the economy because of some return of some of the public health orders. This is another, again, look at the what had been growth. This is foot traffic among various sectors in Wisconsin, retail, information, and so on. Sort of as the stay-at-home orders were lifted, some return of that activity, but then it's kind of dropped off and flattened out with some of the orders that have occurred. Same with looking at a select group of states, Wisconsin, with some of those both southern states that have seen increasing case loads, western states such as California and Arizona, and then what's happening in New York, which is still relatively under some amount of lockdown, but some peak, increase until July, and then some fall off as some of the stay-at-home orders had to be reapplied or applied in greater effect. So that's a quick snapshot of where the economy sits right now, as I presented to you in previous meetings. And I'll stop sharing my screen, and you can end your meeting if you'd like. So,
are there questions for Dave? Alder Carter. You're still muted, Alder.
Not so fast with ending the meeting, Dave.
I knew if I said that, I'd get a question.
I just got a quick question because you talked about air travel going down. Do you have any information regarding hotel stays?
Yeah, that was some of that that sales tax information that I showed you for Dane County.
Okay.
So you'll see it's not really coming back much. There is some growth. I think it went down as much as 90%. It is coming back slowly in terms of hotel stays. We'll get some more information probably in the next couple weeks from a consultant that we engaged through Monona Terrace on what's happening sort of nationally with hotel stays, and I'll be able to present that at future meetings.
And then for vehicle sales, you said that is climbing up. Is that for new vehicles or is that with pre-owned?
That's all vehicle sales, new and
okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions for Dave? All right, seeing none. Alder Moreland?
I move to adjourn.
Alder Carter?
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all and have a good night.